We come on the air amid a tsunami of Trump-manufactured crises and extreme conduct. We'll get to all of that for you. But our top story is the one driving Donald Trump's approval ratings down to new depths by the day. It's the prospect of empty store shelves and rising prices on all sorts of goods nationwide. NBC News reporting this, quote, retailers are warning that U.S. consumers could once again be faced with empty store shelves and the kind of supply chain snarls that mark the COVID era if Donald Trump's tariffs on China remain at their current levels. Companies have been canceling their shipments of goods from China and halting new orders. Some of the products likeliest to go missing from store shelves in the coming months will be lower-cost footwear, apparel, toys, and electronics, for which manufacturing is heavily concentrated in China. And what will be on the store shelves will likely come in at a higher cost. Prices are already rising. CNBC reports this, quote, Amazon merchants are hiking prices for everything from diaper bags and refrigerator magnets to charm necklaces and other top-selling items as they confront higher import costs. E-commerce software company Smart Scout tracked 930 products on Amazon that have seen increased prices since April 9th. With an average jump of 29%. 6 months after a presidential election that was defined by deep voter frustration over the price of everything, there are headlines like this one in the New York Times today. Quote, a sign that consumers are anxious. They're cutting back on snacks. New York Times reports this, quote, consumers worried about the economy are pulling back on their spending. And that anxiety is translating into lower sales and profits for some of the country's largest consumer-oriented companies. In fact, we've seen a steady drumbeat of warnings from the business community in the last couple weeks.
America's CEOs are sounding the alarm, warning that the U.S. economy could soon take a big hit after President Trump's sweeping tariff announcement sent markets spinning.
Rick, Liberation Day was just a few weeks ago, earlier this month. How have things felt with you and your business since you learned how high these tariffs were going to be?
I'm rapidly being liberated from my money. So not so great, Becky.
There will likely be pricing. Tariffs are inherently inflationary.
I think we've lost a whole year of earnings growth because the policies have already happened.
Now, the economic picture is becoming a defining political crisis for Donald Trump. He rode a wave of post-COVID anxiety and frustration with rising prices into the White House for a second time. And day in and day out on the campaign trail, he promised to lower prices like this.
From today and from the day I take the oath of office, we will rapidly drive prices down and make America affordable again.
Literally the opposite has come to pass, but not because of a pandemic, because of him. And now that he's in office, Trump, again, can't blame anybody else. He did this. He started the trade war. He imposed a 145% tariff on China, one of our biggest trading partners. And now Trump faces headline after headline after live shot about stressed business owners, stressed out and angry consumers, and even some of his closest allies on Wall Street are publicly sounding the alarm. So now he's desperately trying to create the impression that everything's under control, he's in charge, and that trade war is winding down. Trump telling Time magazine in an interview that the president of China gave him a call. And when he was asked what President Xi said, he said this. We're going to have to quote it and read it to you in its entirety. Quote, if people want to, well, we all want to make deals. But I am this giant store. It's a giant, beautiful store, and everybody wants to go shopping there. And on behalf of the American people, I own the store, and I set prices, and I'll say, if you want to shop here, this is what you have to pay, end quote. Not exactly inspiring, not even an answer to the question. Today, the Chinese government once again denied that any talks have taken place. A spokesperson saying, quote, China and the U.S. have not held consultations or negotiations on the issue of tariffs. The United States should not confuse the public, end quote. The Trump administration flailing about with no end in sight to Donald Trump's trade war with China. is where we start today. U.S. financial commentator for the Financial Times and writer of the Unhedged newsletter, Robert Armstrong, is back with us. Also joining us, host of the Bulwark podcast, MSNBC political analyst Tim Miller is here. Your line about an old man in a hurry stuck with me all night. So we had a request in for your reappearance today, and I really want you to explain to me where the breakdown is in anyone sort of nodding and going along with Trump starting a trade war with the economy in the healthy position it was in. Why couldn't that have been averted by just his allies in the business world before it started?
Trump is a hard man to convince. And although he's very flexible and very responsive to the market and to popularity, this is an issue where he's been a true believer for 40 years. Tariffs. The power of tariffs, and even beyond tariffs, the basic idea that America is being treated unfairly, not only by its enemies, but by its friends. So you have a kind of ideological purism at the center of Trump's political philosophy here. And like all ideological purism, it's turning out to be quite dangerous. And what in particular, I think, has led the administration astray is the view that tariffs achieve all goals. So there might be any number of good reasons or bad reasons you might want to have a tariff. You might want to bring jobs back to the United States. You might want to generate revenue. You might want to protect national security. You might want to rebuild a manufacturing base. But for all of those goals, you would have different tariffs aimed different places and set in different ways and negotiated in different ways. But what Trump basically said in the run-up to Liberation Day was, we're going to have all of those things and a pony, and we're going to be richer, and it's going to happen really quickly. Look, the world trading system took 50 years to turn into the beast that it is now. It's not going to be changed in 2 years, let alone 2 weeks. So it is a case of massively overpromising on the part of Trump and the Trump administration.
It feels like the business community and the markets are meeting the real Trump for the first time. What is the difference in how they view him this time from last time?
I mean, I think there is a realization, as we talked a little bit about yesterday, that the second Trump term is not the first Trump term. This is a president who feels like he was slighted the first time around, maybe misused some of his opportunities, and he's more determined to push the core of his agenda now. And I think what people are realizing is that this core agenda about tariffs involves shocks to the economy. It's not like a tax cut. This is a tax increase, and it's going to be visible, and like any tax increase, it's going to be painful, and there's going to be consequences. And it's like, it's really happening.
Yeah, but that's it. But that's a tariff, perfectly executed. There's nothing that he's done that he's executed well. So it's a tariff without a public formula rooted in anything, executed by people they like, but he doesn't listen to, and they fear, and they seem to have their hands on the wheel.
And no warning. This is the important thing. Anytime you're going to make if you want a major piece of economic policy to go smoothly, you telegraph it. You don't, it's not shock therapy. Maybe you use, a shock may be useful in a negotiation. It's not useful in economic policy making because people need time to adjust. Another point is Trump seems to have lost track of the difference between a tariff and an embargo. If you put a 10 or a 20% levy on Chinese goods, that's a tariff.
But do you think he knows the difference?
Well, I think, if 145 is an 145%, that's an embargo. That's the number of profits that can be profitably, the number of products, rather, that can be profitably sold in the United States with an 145% tariff coming from China. It's very small. You're just turning it off. Now, I'm sure Trump assumed that negotiations would bring those tariffs down. I mean, I think he had a vision of the rest of the world crawling to the White House on its knees. But what we've learned in the last week or so is that's really not happening. All along, real experts, people with real expertise in the trade area have said trade negotiations take a long time. The devil's in the details. It's hard work. And this team seems to have assumed that these issues could be resolved overnight. I mean, it's absolutely crazy.
Who in the business community sort of has the best back channel to him, if those are even being used? I mean, who still thinks of themselves as someone who can talk sense into him?
I don't know. I wish I had the answer to that question. I think even in the first Trump administration, someone like Jamie Dimon had an easy time getting through to the White House, and other bank CEOs. I think, Trump likes the big names and listens to the big names. He's a TV guy. But I honestly don't know if those calls are getting through at this point. I'd like to know, but I honestly don't.